Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Zzzax of Life podcast, a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. I'm Mike Mack. That's Kyle Burbank. How's it going, Kyle?
Hello. It's good. I'm going to add us to the homepage of the website that we work for. So
Wait,
there's that.
what?
So we have this new, I might as well plug it. We have a new section. If you go to laughingplace.com, we have a what we're covering. And so it has some sort of like trending news. So like X-Men 97 and some of the things you've written for that are in our trending section. But we've also been putting up our live streams there so people can make sure to tune in live. So I'm going to be adding that right now. So if you're hearing this in the future, you missed it, but you can keep an eye out for other live streams.
Yeah, I was confused. I was like, I'm pretty sure we've had the podcast on the homepage before, but not live episodes. So there you go.
Brave new world.
Yeah, so we are back. We are doing this sort of bi-weekly schedule right now with X-Men 97. So we'll have 2 episodes to discuss. And oh boy, do we have a lot to discuss from, this week's episode in particular. But we will also, of course, have another fun draft. But as always, let's jump into the news first off. And yesterday was, I guess CinemaCon is still going on right now, but the day that we cared about was yesterday, which was the Walt Disney Studios presentation. And we had some Marvel presentation stuff going on there. We haven't gotten, the two of us have not gotten to see any of the footage or anything like that. So they showed, what was it, like 9 minutes of Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah, and I think a first look at like probably just like a short sizzle reel or like tiny clips of Brave New World.
Yes, the new Captain America movie, which I saw some images from and read some descriptions, so I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, Alex wrote up a description and then EW put out some first look images today.
And then we won't repeat what he said, but Kevin Feige did introduce Deadpool and Wolverine in a fun way. But again, not going to repeat that on the podcast, and I think you can probably infer what we're talking about. And then the only news that really came out of it, aside from those first looks, was that Fantastic Four is set to begin shooting next month. It's set again for May 25th. 2025, I believe.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah, if only there was a calendar on a website somewhere that had all of the Marvel releases. You can find that on laughingplace.com.
And he also did confirm what we were talking about last time, whereas the asterisk on Thunderbolts is intentional, and he says it'll make sense when the movie's released.
Yeah, which I think you have the best theory as to why that is a part of the title now. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, I figure it's kind of one of those things where they're disagreeing about the name of the group, and so they decide to put an asterisk on it because they haven't all signed on to that moniker or something like that.
Yeah, no, I do think once you threw that out there, I was like, oh, that's a better theory than me saying the title is actually Thunderbolts and Sentry. But no, I do like that idea. I could totally see Yelena being like, we haven't officially locked down that name yet. So yeah, I could see that being the case. We had some very exciting news that absolutely no Marvel fan was looking for. And I use the term very exciting pretty loosely. Finn Jones teased a return as Iron Fist. This isn't all that surprising because we know Charlie Cox is back as Daredevil. We knew John Bernthal was coming back. Kristen Ritter has been linked to coming back as well as Jessica Jones. I don't think we've seen anything officially about Mike Colter returning as Luke Cage. But with the rest of them returning, Finn Jones seemed like it could definitely be in the cards. Iron Fist wasn't the most popular series. Not a lot of people loved. First of all, Iron Fist is not the most popular character, even in the comics. So I don't think there was a lot of excitement about the possibility of Iron Fist returning. But he did in his Instagram story a few weeks back. He shared, I guess, less than a couple weeks back because we would have been talking about it last episode. He shared an image of him packing, and he had a Power Man and Iron Fist comic in that picture. And could be something else, but it seems pretty deliberate that that's what he's hinting at. So Finn Jones possibly returning as Iron Fist. We, as I mentioned, know for sure that John Bernthal is returning as the Punisher. And that was completely confirmed now as we saw some set photos of him on Daredevil Born Again, which was really weird because we don't report on like set photos and all those leaked images and things like that. But this was like intentionally leaked. These were really good quality images that Marvel was like, yeah, get these out there, get some hype going for this series. So yeah, John Bernthal returning as the Punisher in Daredevil Born Again, possibly other characters returning as well. We did get some exciting new casting news, and this one was out of left field, really. Julia Garner, not super familiar with her work, but she has been cast as the Silver Surfer in Marvel's Fantastic Four. Sorry, the Fantastic Four. But she's not playing Norrin Rad, so it's not necessarily a gender flip for the character. She is playing a character named Shala Bal. Again, comic book, no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But she is a character in the comics, like in Silver Surfer, in the main continuity, but she never is the Silver Surfer herself until you get to a weird spin-off alternate universe comic called Earth X, where she does become the Silver Surfer very, very briefly. So, weird thread to pull there for this movie, but at least we're getting the Silver Surfer, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll do whatever they want with it. We have no idea.
We have some weird news from the past week. There was a very quiet collaboration between Marvel and Coca-Cola that has since been revealed, but the product was out there in stores. As a matter of fact, I went out and picked some up. For those of you listening, I am showing one of the Coca-Cola Marvel cans, and it is a Nick Fury can. I learned the hard way, by the way, that if you buy a 12-pack of cans, you're going to get one character on all 12 cans. So don't expect to collect them all by buying a 12-pack. But yeah, there's this collaboration going on where you have these limited edition cans. There's a little QR code on them, which let me see if I can share it. I don't know if
the bottles also, the 20-ounce bottles, I think, are also.
Yeah, there are the bottles as well. This will let you collect a Nick Fury if you can scan that QR code. But I see our guest trying to scan it in the green room down there. So if you collect these characters, this is where I'm confused because they said there's like 36 characters. They listed 33, and then if you go into the website to see the number, it's like 28. So I don't know what the actual number of characters is, but if you collect, I think 28 of them, you are then entered into a sweepstakes for some really huge prizes, like a Disney cruise, like what they're calling an Ultimate Marvel fan experience. So there's some really cool stuff. You can also enter a daily prize where so far I actually have to enter today. I just remember that now. But you get little daily prizes so far. I've only gotten like digital wallpapers, but they're fun. So interesting collaboration here, and you can find these. I'm finding them all over the place now. It was like I had to specifically go out to Walmart to buy some of these cans, but I've seen them in Publix. I've seen them in a few other stores too. So
yeah, they were promoting them. We talked a little bit about CinemaCon. They were promoting it on some of the elevators at Caesar's Palace and gave the exhibitors who were coming to see the show, they all got a bottle of Coke or Coke Zero on their way in.
Oh, that's another thing to mention too. The Coke and Coke Zero have different sets of characters. So if you want to guarantee you're going to get somebody new, go to the other, whichever one. Even if you don't like that version.
I guess it's called Coke Zero Sugar, technically, right?
Coke Zero Sugar, yeah. So yeah, you can collect all sorts of different fun cans and bottles with this collaboration right now. We're going to be talking about X-Men 97, but we got some fun, exciting X-Men 97 news in a little teaser that was released yesterday. It was like a 30-second teaser, and there's not a whole lot of new footage. It's mostly recaps of the last couple episodes. But one brief shot, you see Captain America's shield fly in and hit the ground in front of what looks like it's Rogue, maybe. So, yeah, it seems like we're going to see Captain America. And I think it was Brad Winderbaum a few weeks ago said, who's like an executive producer on the series, said that fans of the old animated series are going to be excited to see some of the characters that do show up in this series. So it looks like we're getting a Captain America cameo. He actually has been in the animated series. There was one episode, which was like a flashback episode where it was an adventure with him and Wolverine taking on the Red Skull. So not the first time he's appeared in this, but really exciting to see that pop up. And, we'll talk about some connections to the MCU later on. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with this show.
What's funny is when you sent this to me to point it out, I was like, wait, I thought that I already saw this. Because I remember doing the DiCaprio point at the TV regarding seeing Cap Shield, and then I remembered that was during Three Body Problem, not during X-Men '97.
I have not watched that, so
well, somebody has a Cap Shield on their wall, so that's what I did there.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's on my list to check out. Not Marvel related, so we won't dive into that. Last bit of news actually just broke fairly recently, and I'm hoping you know more about it than I do because
I probably know just as much, but I did write the article, so I will say. So today is Disneyland Paris's 32nd birthday, and they had a press conference, announced all sorts of stuff. They're actually changing the name of Walt Disney Studios Park, which is their second park, their second gate. It's going to be called Disney Adventure World, which is just a terrible name. But they did announce as part of that later this year and lasting until spring 2025, there's going to be a new, what they're calling a nighttime activation. So kind of one of those like kind of pop-up entertainment things. It's going to be on top of like the Web Slingers building, basically. And apparently they don't really say as much in the little blurb that they released, but our friend Luke, who was at the press conference, said that they announced it's going to be Doctor Strange and Wanda, the Scarlet Witch. So there'll be projections and music and some other special effects. So yeah, I'm wondering if maybe this would be like a little spooky, given those two, last time we saw those two characters together. And it's only taking place at night. So yeah, we don't have a ton of details like when it'll arrive or what it is exactly, but should be pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I am all about a nighttime thing with those characters involved. That sounds really exciting. And yeah, now I'm really curious to see how far they are willing to go with the spookiness of it, as you mentioned, because that movie was legitimately like had some scary moments in it. So it would be interesting to see what they do there.
And it's on top of the web, like I said, the Web Slingers building. So I also wonder if there'll be like a Peter Parker element from like No Way Home. I mean, it doesn't have to actually reference the movies, but just given the location. But I think it's more just like at the top there, the whatever it is, the Brigade something or other. I've only been there once to that part of the park.
Well, that's more than me, so you know more than I do about their Avengers campus. But yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's better that having been to DCAs, I actually think it's better in some ways.
Wow. We'll have to have a larger discussion about that at some point. Okay, that was our last bit of news. Let's dive into, like I said, we have 2 episodes of X-Men 97, and the first is kind of split into 2 different episodes within itself. So let's jump into the first one. And yes, thank you. The banner is up. If you're watching live, we are going to be having some X-Men 97 spoilers. We're jumping right into these episodes. So if you haven't watched yet, come back later. Listen to us after you have watched it. Also, if you haven't watched episode 5 yet, man, I'm honestly a little bit jealous of you. But let's start with episode 4, which is titled Motendo / Life Death Part 1. Kind of weird to me that they decided to do these 2 episodes this way. My only thought was
the thing that they used to do back in the day, or because I feel like it was mostly 22 standalones, but they didn't do like 11 minutes.
Not that I can remember. I mean, they always had like an A and B story type of thing going on, but not like this. So maybe there was 1 or 2 here and there, but I don't remember any of them being like that. So my only thought was somebody came up with this great idea to do this video game type episode, and then they were like, well, we can't really stretch that out to 22 minutes, so let's cut up the life death story and blend them together into one. But so that's what we got here. We got this video game episode, this story with Motendo, and the idea is it's Jubilee's birthday. She wants to go to an arcade with the entire team, and Magneto is not having it. I do like the visual of Magneto just like playing Galaga or something. So that would have been pretty fun. But so she's upset. She goes back to her room with Roberto, and Rogue had said they're going to have some surprises for her. So she's, they find this Motendo, this video game console in her room, and she thinks, oh, well, this is the surprise they got me. There is a cartridge in there that is very reminiscent of a game called X-Men Mutant Apocalypse that was a Super Nintendo game, which was a lot of fun. And the image was burned into my brain, from having it when I was younger. So I saw that and I was like, that's where I did the full Leo point once I saw that cartridge. So they start playing this game, and then obviously it goes wrong and they get pulled into the video game, very Tron-like. And we learn quickly that it is Mojo is the villain, hence Motendo, is the villain behind this whole thing. And Mojo, were you familiar with Mojo at all, Kyle? Have you seen him before?
I mean, seems familiar, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very memorable in terms of the imagery character. Not that long ago, Hasbro released a big Mojo figure that you probably remember seeing. So,
do you know what happened if you had that and then you misplaced it? I lost my mojo.
Wasn't expecting the impression and everything, but well done. So yeah, we see that Mojo is the villain here, except he's been dieting. He explains that ratings have been down with his television network, which, if you're not familiar, Mojo is another dimensional being who runs a television network that basically he televises the torture of mutants, and he feeds literally on the entertainment, the ratings of his television network. So ratings have been down, so he is very skinny. So he says video games are the future, and his plan is to have Jubilee as the star of his new video game. And she, being upset with the X-Men, seems kind of on board with it. So Roberto has to try and pull her back to reality, figuratively and literally, I guess. And they get assisted by a mysterious character in a helmet that's kind of all spiky and some chains. What is do you remember the name she calls her? Hot Topic something?
Yeah, she said something about Hot Topic, because I immediately had to Google, because I've been wondering actually this entire time whether there would be some anachronisms, because if this is supposed to be like 1997, whether we'd have things that didn't exist then. Right. Hot Topic did exist. It probably wasn't nearly as big because it started in like 89, I think it said. Oh, so wow. Probably not real well known. And I also don't know if it like pivoted into the goth thing after 97 or when that happened. But
that's a good question.
Still, yeah. I'm not going to count it. They got it right. Jeremiah's pointing to himself. He's old enough to know.
Do you know what? Do we do something unprecedented right now? Do we have an expert opinion here? Should we bring our guest on?
We need to solve the mystery of the Hot Topic.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, guys. Hot Topic was big actually in the early 90s. If you go back and look at the progression of when Nightmare Before Christmas turned from just a movie to the national domination, that is all Hot Topic, and goth was big on that. So yes, I'll fade back into the background, but I just went to Hot Topic, bought my Depeche Mode shirts, got a Blizzard. I'm out.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeremiah. Jeremiah will be joining us for the draft later on, just to throw that in there. Also, when he mentioned Nightmare Before Christmas, Kyle, I could see the Family Guy gears turning in your head, and I'm glad you did not go there. If you know, you know. Anyway, this character, kind of jumping ahead in the episode, because we do find out who she is later on, but there is a version of this character in the comics. She goes by the name Abscissa, and it is a variant of Jubilee who agrees to become Mojo's slave, more or less, to help. I think it's in this comics, it's to save the X-Men. It's obviously a different story here, but we'll get to more of what this version of the character is later on.
And once I found that out, once that part is revealed, and I know we're jumping ahead again, I was like, oh, I bet you this is, and sure enough, it's voiced by Allison Court, who was the original voice of Jubilee and is not in this.
Yeah, which is impressive because honestly, their voices weren't all that different. I thought they did a really good job of that.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So they jump into this. Jubilee agrees to be a part of this video game, and we get some really, really cool like 16-bit animation moments. It looks very reminiscent of first. You get a lot of Days of Future Past imagery in there, and then there's also a lot of looks a lot like the X-Men arcade game as well.
Mm-hmm.
So really cool.
Or any side scroller or fighter game from that.
Well,
era.
yes, yeah, absolutely. But just in terms of like the character designs and things like that, it looks a lot like the X-Men arcade game. We get through they play through all of the levels and everything, and they get to the final boss battle with Magneto, fitting for Jubilee's story in this episode. On Asteroid M, and Roberto is almost killed in the fight because Mojo does give us the very Freddy Krueger-esque line of if you die in the game, you die for real. So there's stakes there, and so Roberto is almost killed. Jubilee takes out Magneto, at least seemingly, and then they get some more assistance once again from Abscissa, which I didn't mention this before too, but they do show her. They have that name in the credits. She is credited as Abscissa, so it's interesting that they never say the name, but they throw it in there. So they defeat Magneto. The three of them now, Jubilee, Abscissa, and Roberto, are then challenged by Mojo himself, who comes out of an X-Men arcade cabinet and fights them. And obviously, it's a pretty quick fight because we have 11 minutes to tell this story. But we learn that this Abscissa is a test of Jubilee, I guess, like a simulation of Jubilee. She explains that Mojo created a whole bunch of different versions of her to run tests on the game, and she's the only one who survived, and she's basically become a bug in the game. So very Wreck-It Ralph-esque almost. Some pretty cool storytelling there, though. I liked it a lot.
She was on the side of the video game the whole time.
Which she's not if you're talking about the X-Men arcade cabinet, and I can tell by looking right over here. But yeah, I really liked this episode, this little half episode. I loved the unique, like I said, I think they kind of maybe shoehorned it in because somebody probably was like, I have this great idea. And then they were like, we have to do that. And we got some really cool animation. We got some fun storytelling. So I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I liked the, I've played those video games, so it all felt very reminiscent. But yeah, just kind of a fun, silly thing. Sorry, I'm fixing something I messed up, so I'll be quiet for a moment.
Well, and so we go from that fun, lighthearted episode to a very deep and dark comic story called Life Death. It doesn't quite go all the way like the comics do, but still pretty heavy episode, or back half of this episode. And this is Storm and Forge. You'll remember earlier in the series, Storm was hit by a weapon that neutralized her powers, possibly permanently. And Forge showed up at a bar as she was drinking alone and basically explained that he wants to help her. And so, again, the comic story, we won't go into it. It is much darker, much deeper and heavier. But we kind of scratch the surface of that here. And Storm, they get this fun little horseback riding scene. And Storm takes note of the place they're at. So they're in Forge's cabin, and then they go outside, and it's just like I don't know, where would you place them? It's just like a desert. I don't know. Arizona, we'll say. They're in Arizona.
Well, didn't they say before, like in the last episode, didn't it say where they were? Was it Texas?
They were Texas. Yeah, I think you're right. They were in Texas. So we get this scene out in the desert, and Storm takes note of the fact that the wind is different here, and she's seen this owl a few times. And so there's some weird stuff going on. In the comics, they are in Forge's mansion, which is very like technologically advanced, and there's a lot of simulations going on around her, and she can never really tell what's real. So I thought maybe they were playing at that a little bit, but it does seem like they go in a different direction later on. There's some fun little Easter eggs in this episode too. We We see Forge's past told in photographs on the wall, and we see him with a team of mutants that in the comics is known as X Factor. We don't get the name of that here, but some of the team that we see in a picture includes Havoc, which is Cyclops' brother, Polaris, which is Magneto's daughter, and then Quicksilver, which we've known from the MCU already. So pretty interesting to throw some of those characters in there. I'm curious to see if we will see more of X Factor and we go down that road in the future. But for now, it's just Forge trying to help Storm, and he explains the reason he's trying to help her and wants to help her so badly is because he is the one who created the weapon that neutralized her powers. He's also created the collars that they put on mutants to neutralize their powers. So she is obviously not happy with that, and he tries to stop her by professing his love to her, which then leads to her slapping him, which is again a moment from the comics that was pretty spot on and really well done. So I enjoyed that. Storms off. I gotta find another word for that. And we
departs rapidly.
Storm departs rapidly and angrily. And we cut to what becomes a nightmare sequence where she is on horseback again, but this time she falls off a cliff. We see that owl again, and then she's back in the cabin. Forge, she falls through. I'm not sure where she was, that she fell through the roof of the cabin, but I don't know how that happened. But she Forge rushes to her aid, and then we have this monster emerge, and it is a giant owl-like creature that Forge does quickly refer to as a demon before it throws him away, and wraps Storm up into another nightmare and reveals itself to be called the Adversary, and that is the end of that episode. The Adversary is a villain, and a villain from this story in the comics. It's an evil spirit or a demon, I guess, however you want to identify it. But it takes the shape of other humans and does some dark stuff. So I'm curious to see how far they go with it in the series here. So what did you think of Life Death Part 1?
I think this worked better than if they would have cut between the two stories like a regular episode.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I almost wish, though, that they just had 2 11-minute episodes as part of one, like put another intro and stuff, just do it all the way. But other than that, like I didn't mind it being this split episode, even though they don't really go together tonally at all.
Right. No, yeah, very, very different stories that they're telling here. So, I mean, even just like the color palette of it, like it was so bright and vibrant in the first one, and then very dark and
yeah,
so.
And you also have like the first section really reminded me, I'm like, okay, this feels like a Saturday morning cartoon, where it's just kind of this fun standalone. Whereas then you have the serialized part, the overarching story with the second half. So yeah, I thought it was definitely different. And it was not as different as the next one we're going to get to, but
yeah. Well, and it's funny you mentioned it as a Saturday morning cartoon, because before watching that episode, I had the thought, oh man, I wish I went out and got like some sort of cereal and just sat on my couch with a bowl of cereal watching this. And it would have fit perfectly for that one. Not so much for this week's episode, though. I don't think I've ever cried into a bowl of cereal before. So let's jump into this 5th episode in.
Did you legit cry, first of all?
I did. Oh yeah, no, I did, and not only that, but I watch the episode twice every Wednesday, because I watch it on my own, and then I write our weekly recaps, which you can read on Laughing Place. And I cried both times I watched it, so yeah, it really got me, and I'll explain a little bit at the very end of this, but what really got me so well. But this episode is titled "Remember It," which did not register to me, and I am upset with myself for it not registering, which again I'll talk about later on. But we open up with a news report on the X-Men. They're trying to shine some light on their work and put mutants in a more positive light, while Genosha is being welcomed into the UN. And so that's where the big story is in this episode. It is Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit going to Genosha as they are hosting a big gala, which they call it a gala, but they never refer to it officially as the Hellfire Gala. I'm curious if that's what it was supposed to be. I guess we won't really know for sure, but it does kind of seem that way. So they go to Genosha, and we see that it is almost like an overnight just mutant paradise. Did you catch the music, by the way, as they're flying in?
No.
It was like a steel drum theme song, like the X-Men theme song, but like steel drum. Awesome. I can't wait for them to release the music from this episode.
Before we even get there, there's a character who's about to show up that I was hoping would be in this episode based on the fact that they inserted them into the intro.
Ooh, yeah, I didn't mention the intro. I did talk about them in my episode recaps. Which one was in the intro?
Nightcrawler.
Oh yes, yes. Okay, there was a lot of characters that showed up in this episode, so but yeah, no, Nightcrawler was featured in the intro and then was a big part of this episode. So yes, it was very nice to see Nightcrawler back in the X-Men animated series. So we see this mutant paradise that Nightcrawler is a part of there. He's, I guess, not officially on the council, but they say he's kind of helping. Like, I don't know if he's in charge of tourism or what. But yeah, so he is helping.
$10 for an apple. That's what he's in charge of.
We see some young mutants as just a easy way to show how happy life is on Genosha. But some of the characters include Glob, who is a kind of the worst superpower. Like,
you know that character, the Glob? What if the Glob?
He basically just has translucent skin, so you see all of him. And like, if you read the description of his powers, like he can throw bits of him. I'm like, ew. So yeah, Glob is one of them. Pixie is another one.
If you drink him, do you learn how to speak a bunch of different languages?
Drink the ooze. You got Pixie in there, who is a pixie, but she can like teleport. And so there's a lot of other young characters too. Leech, we see return. He showed up a couple episodes ago. So he's back there on Genosha as well. And we also see not protesters. I guess they're welcoming the X-Men because they know they're arriving. But they're holding all sorts of signs. And a lot of them say Magneto was right, which to me immediately triggered Thanos was right. And I thought there's some interesting parallels there that we probably don't have time to get into a whole big discussion on. But
pretty, not today, at least.
Yeah, pretty interesting thing to include there. We learned that Madeline Pryor has found a role in Genosha. She is on the council there. So I like that they brought her back. I'm curious to see if they go in a different direction with her in the future, but I do enjoy that she is still a part of the series. And then we see Nightcrawler, who agrees to show Rogue and Gambit around while Magneto meets with the Genoshan Council. As they are being shown around, we do see some more memorable or standout mutants, including Dazzler, who's the mutant pop star, and Exodus, less noticeable character or memorable character, but another mutant who's appeared many times in the comics. This episode had some standout quotes to me, a couple of them at least. One of them came from Nightcrawler. It was a conversation. Nightcrawler's trying to urge Gambit, like, you and Rogue should be married. Like, I can see the connection between the two of you. He says, scoundrels like me don't get that happy ending. We're too busy sinning. And Nightcrawler says, there is no love without sin. Love is best measured in what we forgive. And I heard that, and I was like, this should not be in a cartoon. Like, this is that. Come on, it's so deep, and that kind of signifies what this show and this episode in particular, how far it goes beyond what you expect an animated series to be. We go back to the mansion for some interesting story bits here too. We get Scott being interviewed for that news report, and they ask him about his son, and he loses it, just completely loses his cool, and points out that he's not here because humans are ungrateful, and they're lucky that the X-Men are different because without them, none of them would be alive. And he storms out, which I can say for Cyclops, but not for Storm. But then we also see a bit with him and Jean. Although actually, first, Wolverine and Jean have a moment outside. Jean is still trying to get her memories back, and she kisses Wolverine, and then immediately kind of pulls back and is like, about to apologize, and Wolverine says, "You're Jean Grey, he's Scott Summers. Those are the rules. You just forgot for a second." And so there's still clearly this love triangle there, but Wolverine is trying to remove himself from it. I saw somebody say on some social media somewhere that one of the things they really liked about this series so far is how little Wolverine is being a part of it. And I think they are doing a really good job with this character. I'm sure he'll get his moment in the spotlight, but like they're telling his story in little pieces as it goes. And so it's interesting to see. For a character who spent so much time in the spotlight, it's nice to see them pull back on him a little bit. Let me just stick to the mansion story here before we get back to Genosha. But we see Scott talking to Jean after he flew off the handle during the interview, and he's, they're talking about their son again, Nathan, who was sent into the future a few episodes ago. As one does. But they're discussing, the loss that they both suffered. Well, that he suffered, I guess, if you think this is just Jean, but then it turns out it's not. It was actually Madeline he was talking to, and Jean breaks in psychically, and she's like, "If you'll excuse us, Madeline," and she flips out at Scott because psychic rapport was their thing, and how did that scene play out for you? Because I was not sure what I was watching the first time through.
Yeah, I mean, I think I caught on pretty quickly, but I was just like, "Wait, what?" It's like, "Oh, cool. That's cool."
Yeah, no, it was because what I noticed afterwards is that the next scene, Jean is wearing a different outfit, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it now. I see what happened there." So yeah, that was well done. And so they have this big argument, but it's broken up when Jean suffers some sort of psychic attack. And we don't know what happened to her, but she's kind of incapacitated. Doesn't quite faint. She stays on her feet. But we'll jump back to Genosha, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. But so we see the Genoshan Council, which consists of Banshee, Moira McTaggart, Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost, and Callisto, the leader of the Morlocks. So pretty eclectic, fun group there. I would like to see more of their story. Doesn't seem like we're going to get more of their story, but we'll talk about that. And we learned that they want Magneto to be their chancellor, and he agrees to do it as long as Rogue can be their queen. And which I get, chancellor and queen. Is there like chancelless? I don't know. But so we then see Rogue, arguing with Magneto. She doesn't, she isn't willing to get back together, I think is her words, with Magneto. So again, kind of touching on that weird romantic history between the two of them that we didn't really know anything about until Rogue then has a conversation with Gambit, telling her history with Magneto and this weird sort of creepy teacher relationship that went wrong. And she explains that she left him and then became an X-Man. And so Gambit, is heartbroken, doesn't want, he always wanted the official relationship with Rogue, but because she can't touch him, she always wanted to stay away. And so he says they'll just be friends, and they move on. And so that's where things start to get really interesting. So the next scene, we start to go to the gala. Before we do, we see some fireworks in the sky, but in the sky, very quickly, you see the silhouette of the Watcher. Yes, the big bald guy in the stars from Marvel's What If. We know he has connections to the MCU. So that's one side of it. Things are really interesting. There's a connection there now with X-Men 97 and the MCU that hasn't been there before. So that's exciting. Curious to see what they do with that. Again, brings me back to that talk of Captain America's shield. Is this the animated Steve Rogers we've seen before, or is this going to be Sam Wilson that shows up here? Who knows? So it could be anything. But the other side of that is the Watcher shows up when something big is about to happen. So we're about to go into this gala. The Watcher is watching. And so something important is about to happen. So we get into the gala, and word has spread that Magneto has been chosen as their chancellor of Genosha. And Valerie Cooper the UN representative, I don't know. She runs in and demands to speak with the council. And one of my favorite throwaway line in this, Sebastian Shaw asks her, "What's wrong? What seems to be the problem?" And Emma Frost is like, "Is it your dress?" And that's they just move on. Love Emma. But she clearly has an issue with Magneto becoming their chancellor. And they have this awesome exchange. This is the second of the 2 quotes in this episode, where Cooper says, "Most other nations don't allow a terrorist to be their leader." And Magneto responds with, "Yet so many allow their leaders to be terrorists." Again, not a Saturday morning cartoon type of line. Like, man, they really hit hard in this episode.
Yeah.
You're the music guy between the 2 of us. We then see Rogue's entrance. Did you take note of the song that plays as she awkwardly dances with Magneto?
It was like Beauty and the Beast, wasn't it? It was like a version of Beauty and the Beast.
It was Happy Nation by Ace of Base.
Oh, okay. That's right. So I got confused. There's a part earlier that I thought was like Beauty and the Beast. But yes, yeah, I knew it was Ace of Base. I didn't know the song, but I was like thinking, oh yeah, this is definitely 90s.
Yeah, what's funny is I felt that too. I was like, this is such a 90s song, but I didn't know that it was I thought it might have been just written for this. And I was
could have been a parody of Ace of Base if it wasn't
exactly.
actually them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it starts off like Happy Nation, Happy Nation. I was like, oh, this is kind of corny. And then I look it up afterwards. I'm like, oh, this is a real song. Okay.
They're Swedish, it's okay.
Well, yeah. But no, yeah, with that context, it makes more sense. So yeah, and it does work perfectly for the moment. So yeah, they have this passionate dance scene that was awkward to watch. And we then see, as everybody watches on and they see that Magneto and Rogue make contact and have a big kiss that like takes everybody's attention. We see Madeline Pryor suffer that same psychic attack that we saw Jean suffer. And she hears a voice telling everybody telling them to turn the music off and get everybody out. And it seems vaguely familiar, but we'll get to that. And then we see her, she's bleeding from the nose. She walks out and she's approached by Cable, who we hear then say, turn the music off, get everybody out. So, which I honestly had to check the credits afterwards to see if he was voiced by Josh Brolin because it sounded so much like him. But she takes note of his eyes, realizes that Cable is Nathan, her son. And she's, just happy to see that he made it. He survived. He starts to get pulled away by his technology, bringing him back to his time. And he says, "I'm sorry, Mom." So you have that confirmation for her. And then she says, "Sorry for what?" Big flash of light, explosion. And all of a sudden, everything goes horribly wrong. There's this giant attack from what Gambit refers to as a Godzilla Sentinel, which I loved. And I'm just going to call it the Godzilla Sentinel from now on. They have a really awesome action sequence. Magneto fights with a monorail. And then Gambit has a really cool sequence where he saves the Morlocks. And then eventually, in a very emotional, powerful moment, Magneto is killed by this Godzilla Sentinel. And that sends Rogue into a fit of rage. And she starts to go after the Sentinel herself. Gambit realizes she's dead if I let that happen. He has an awesome action moment where he lights up a motorcycle and launches it at her, takes her out, and saves her from the big green blast that's been killing everybody. And then he goes at the Godzilla Sentinel himself and gets up close, but then gets stabbed by one of its many arm tentacle things. And then, it's this emotional moment. You realize, oh, this is the end of Gambit. But he has one last line in there because the Sentinel says something like mutant threat neutralize, something along those lines. And he says, he smirks and he says, "The name's Gambit, mon ami. Remember it." And then he charges it up and blows up the whole Sentinel in just a really, really awesome moment. That line, "The name's Gambit, remember it," that does come back. That comes from an episode of X-Men, the animated series. Season 2 finale, they're fighting Mr. Sinister's goons, and he says that exact same line, "The name's Gambit, remember it," and then he throws an exploding card. So it was really cool to have that callback. I wish I had realized the episode title. I probably would not have been as emotionally impacted by it. So maybe it's good that I did not realize it. But yeah, so really, really awesome, powerful moment. And then the episode comes to an end with Rogue holding Gambit's body and crying and saying, "I can't feel you," and then crying some more. But the screen cuts to black, and then she continues to cry. Like, you just hear her crying still. And for whatever reason, that hit so hard for me. That's what got me, really, was the black screen with the audio of just her crying. So yeah, I mean, unbelievable episode. I've seen nothing but everybody loving it all over social media. What were your thoughts? How did you feel?
Well, you said that the cut to black got you. Did the sad piano music theme did that work for you?
I mean, it definitely accompanied it well. It would have been
It was
jarring
kinda
if they just
cheesy.
hit the, well, yeah, but if they had just
And
hit the regular theme, it would have been a little much.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but they were also then deleted from the lineup.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
has
yeah,
like
yeah. You have that weird little, like, very 90s early computer animation little
Yeah.
screen. Yeah, so they were removed from that too. But
No, I felt like this was the episode where it really stepped into being like an adult version. We've talked about some like little things, but I think is it Scott? Someone actually says like we said they said dang before. I think he
oh
says
yeah,
the real world word
yeah,
later.
he does. Yeah,
And it's like
he's
pretty
asking how
bloody
many,
too.
yeah, how many mutants died as they're watching the news report. And yeah, so there's a lot of just really powerful moments in this episode, and it was just, I mean, it really, like, the show turned a corner with this one. I was really enjoying the show up to this point, and now it has taken a huge step up, and I am a little worried that it's going to be downhill from here, because it's going to be, that's a tough, tough peak to go up higher than, really. It was a really strong episode, and I'm interested to see where they go. I do think a lot of it's going to be undone. I mean, there's Cable, there's some time travel stuff going on here. He even says "not again" as he's getting pulled back. Like, he's seen this happen before. So, I don't expect any of this to be permanent, but we'll see. I'm curious to see where they go from here.
And kind of speaking to like what we're saying, I was saying like how it feels like this is a turning point to the adult. Gambit is one of the more like cartoony characters to me, because everything is saying his own name and Mon Ami. And so it also feels appropriate that if anyone's going to die, it's him.
Yeah. Well, and him and Magneto too, because when Magneto dies, you think, okay, that's the big impactful moment of this, and then it happens to Gambit, and really Magneto is the more consequential character to kill off, but the Gambit one is the one that's more emotionally.
He's the first one in the credits or in the titles.
The little intro. So yeah, I really loved this episode. Can't wait to see where they go from here. Man, I'm still emotionally recovering from it though.
It's okay.
So. Anything else before we move on to our game?
Let's lighten it up. Let's take the banner down.
Yeah,
Let's
got
bring
the banner
Jeremiah up.
I will get our draft intro. Here we go.
What if I told you we were putting a team together? Assemble.
All right, so because it's a huge surprise to everyone, our guest today is none other than Jeremiah.
Yes, Jeremiah is here, Mon Ami.
Mizami. Because it's plural. You'll notice Gambit actually does change it when he's talking to multiple people.
Laughing Places resident, Hot Topic expert Jeremiah joining us for another fun draft today. It was kind of hard trying to find a tie-in to whatever. We always try to tie into either whatever holiday is coming up or, whatever subject we're talking about. Kind of difficult to find one that really tied in, but we are going to be drafting the best Marvel quotes. So, there were some quotes in this episode I like. I will say right now, I'm not drafting anything from this episode because I feel like they're very specific. But yeah, this is an interesting topic. We are going to go with movies and TV and MCU or not. You can go anything you want there. So lots of options to pick from. Jeremiah, you've been here before. You know how this works.
I'll go first.
First. All right.
I'm not
curious because I feel like
first one though.
I feel like there's a list of like maybe 5 that are in like a top tier.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see where we go from here. So Jeremiah's first. Kyle, that gives you the second pick this week.
Okay.
And I pick third. So
I'm going to get one of what I think are the top 2.
Interesting.
You will probably get the top one because I'm not taking the top.
Well, I don't know what that is. I can't decide.
I'm just curious because you said you have a top 2, and I don't know that I have a tier break there, but it'll be.
I don't know if I do either, but there's. I guess I'm saying. Let's just find out. Jeremiah, what's your pick?
Jeremiah? You chose to pick first.
Did we say what the topic was?
Yeah,
we did. Yeah, we're drafting the best Marvel quotes again.
Most memorable
movies,
quotes.
TV, most memorable. You're right. Sorry, most memorable Marvel quotes. Movies, TV, MCU, whatever we're calling that. Whatever's not in the MCU. I guess it's all MCU at this point.
Sonyverse.
Sure. All right.
Mine is actually from the Sonyverse. It's from Madam Web. No, it's not.
Yeah, I should have put that on my list.
No, I thought about it.
It's Morbin time.
Okay, so my first choice, and this, Kyle, if you don't pick the other one, I'm going to be very upset.
Okay.
The truth is, I am Iron Man.
Okay, so that's interesting that you started with the truth is, because to me, it would be his snap and that I am Iron Man.
Well,
but
I was just going to say I am Iron Man, so really you get both.
Yeah,
we're going to go ahead and do you the favor of
the thing
trimming
that
it.
started it all.
I am Iron
I
Man.
went with that.
we'll give you I am Iron Man on the polls, so it's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a good pick. That was definitely up there, top tier for me. But now Kyle, I'm curious to see what.
Yeah, actually, no. Looking at my list, I don't know which one we're talking about because there are some others. I'm curious to see if this was where Jeremiah was headed, but my pick is going to be with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Okay,
I was holding off on that.
I want to now the way you said it again. We're drafting quotes here, so we got to be specific. You were going
from the Toby one.
Okay. Yeah, I did
Correct,
have
right because like she says, with great power must also come great responsibility.
There must also come great responsibility, which is how it is in the comics. But yeah, any one of them, they're all great.
Unless it's from Madam Web. That one wasn't great.
Didn't realize that. I'm now just angry at that movie without having seen it. So the fact that was even said in there.
It was reversed and said poorly. It's
perfect.
That was the only thing I walked out of that movie thinking and fuming about. Okay, sorry.
Okay, I have really, I think 3 that kind of 4 almost. There's one that I have to take. And you know what? I'm gonna give it the respect of making it the first round pick here because it has been, and it's probably not in the top tier for the rest of you here, but it is for me. It has a personal meaning to it. It has been hanging on my wall since the day I got married. I'm gonna go with I'm with you till the end of the line.
Okay. That was not when you started that, and I applied what was in my head to everything else you were saying. It got funnier and funnier.
Yeah, it's been hanging on my wall since the day I got married. This could be interesting. Let's see.
That would be if we're thinking of the same quote. That would be a really interesting one to have on the wall. Okay, so the reason I wasn't sure I wanted to take that was because the other one I'm going to take here, I didn't want both of my quotes to come from the same character. But I feel like I have to. There's no way it's going to come back to me. It was turned into a musical. I'm going to take I Can Do This All Day.
Yeah. Yep, that's definitely on my list.
Yeah, that was the first one that came to mind when we talked about drafting the most memorable quotes. That was and specifically Rogers the musical started playing in my head. So because of that. So I Can Do This All Day and I'm with you to the end of the line. I'm going 2 Captain America quotes. But we'll see. There might be some more, too. Back to you, Kyle.
Oh, my gosh. There are so many.
There are. And I didn't have a lot of time to put a list together, so I don't have the longest list. But I know there are so many others that will come to mind if I really try.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative.
Yeah, it was on my list, and a good one. And I wasn't sure where to start that quote. If I wanted,
yeah,
to
I was. You think you're the only superhero, Mister? Yeah, I thought about that one too.
Part of a much bigger universe, all of that, like any one of it. But yeah, I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. Is definitely a great one. That to me is really what like sparked the MCU. So I like that one. Jeremiah, we are back to you now. You had the first pick along with I Am Iron Man. What's next?
Do it.
No, there are so many. Like I know what I'm going to use, but I'm like, I want to use this one and this one. Like, I think the easiest one, which I'm really surprised it made it all the way to me again before this came back. Avengers Assemble.
Yeah, that was the other one that would have been top tier for me. I was honestly, I considered putting just Avengers ... nothing else, and then also Avengers ... Assemble. But yeah, you get that Avengers Endgame moment. Yeah,
Chills,
it's
like
no brainer.
Chills.
Yeah, just so good, and deserved to be picked in the first 2 rounds for sure. Could have been the first overall pick, like no question. So you've got a strong start there. I Am Iron Man and Avengers Assemble. What's your third pick going to be?
So again, there's so many honorable mentions, but I think the one, and I'm pretty sure neither of you probably have this anywhere on your list.
Interesting.
Stop running and let the kittens eat you. You will be fine.
From the Marvels.
Yeah. All right. I don't even know how to write that out.
That's more surprising though when
Yeah, that was one, like I had so many in my head, and I was looking through the different list of quotes going like, okay, you know, and again, honorable mentions, I have so many, but that was one I just stopped. It was like, that ranks up there as one of the funniest moments in any Marvel film. So yeah,
that's fair. And I do have some funny ones on my list. So you're right. Was not on my list, but it is a good one. I like it. Kyle, back to you.
In that vein, I think I will go with a funny one, even though I could come up with one that makes way more sense in terms of its impact. But I'm going to go with Why is Gamora?
Nice. Okay, that's a good one. Didn't come to mind, but that is a good one. There are so many funny lines you can go with if you wanted to go down that route. And
well, Drax, just any of his lines.
Yeah, you could just nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too
that
fast.
was another one I had.
No, yeah, there's so many you could pick from him for sure. Why is Gamora is a strong pick. I am left with some tough choices here now. Oh man, there's so many I love. There's one.
Do it.
One I want to take as a joke, and Kyle knows what it is.
I thought about drafting it higher, and I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Do it.
All right. I will do that. I'm between 2 for my other pick, though. I'm gonna keep it simple, and I'm gonna go with. Do I keep going with the same character more or less here? Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna take On Your Left.
Yeah,
that was definitely high on mine.
Yeah, it feels like it needs to be drafted. Well, yes, and so that's what I'm saying. Like Captain America, all my quotes are technically Captain America right now, except for you're right. I'll do it. I will use my last pick here to go with the quote that sadly I have probably said more than any of the others that have been drafted, and that is, you know what happens to a toad that gets struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else.
I forgot to put that on my list, but last night that was the number one thing in my head. I'm like, I have to write that down.
If you are not familiar, we did a show on Laughing Place called the LP Movie Club. We broke down anything that was hitting Disney Plus, which included all of the X-Men movies. And we had a group that was primarily me, Jeremiah, Becca, and Mike Celestino. And so every time we talked about any of the X-Men movies, we threw that classic beloved Storm quote out there for every one of the movies. So like I said, probably said it more than any of these other quotes out there. So You know what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning? That is my final pick. And it pains me because there's another one out there that I absolutely love. And I hope somebody picks it here. But yeah, that's going to be my last pick. Kyle, back to you for your fourth pick now.
I'm torn between two different ones. There is one that I thought is funnier and more unconventional, but I'm not going to draft it. But I'm torn between two. But I think I'm going to go. I thought about, since you drafted all Captain America except for one, I was thinking about taking Captain America, but I'm going to go with Iron Man. I'm going to go genius, billionaire playboy for now I can't even philanthropist.
I know guys with none of that worth 10 of you. That is a good one, and one that that definitely stands out in memory, right? Like even if you can't say it on the first try, you do remember it for sure. Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. Yeah, good pick.
Cap it off, Jeremiah.
I have so many, but this one I have to choose just because it's become one of the best jokes between my friend and I. And I know that this could be a bleep word, but it was in a movie, and it just we'll just think they're talking about a donkey. As far as I'm concerned, that's America's ass.
Yeah, I did consider that too. That is a good one. And I considered going with that or with Captain America's line responding to that later on. So I like it. That's a good one. So many funny lines we could have gone with still, but Jeremiah, any honorable mentions left on your list?
God. I mean, the one that I kept fighting against, and this one, I think you'll both kind of go, oh yeah. It could have started 1,000 different ways, but it follows up. My name is Miles Morales. I was bitten by a radioactive spider.
Yeah.
Just that is one of those iconic that I think in the next couple of years, especially when the third one comes out, we'll know. Flame on, go web go. What a bunch of a-holes. We are Groot.
We are Groot.
Mary Poppins, y'all.
Oh wow, I forgot about that one. That's a good one.
From the Guardians we could have done, but
there were a lot.
Yeah.
Who put the sticks up their butts? So many lines from those movies. Kyle, what about you? What was left on your list?
Well, the one that I was thinking about taking over my last one was I understood that reference.
Yeah.
Oh, and that is actually one that I might have said more too.
There's a ton that are just like things that Becca and I say to each other. And the other one that I was strongly in contention was E-Bombay.
Oh, he loves saying that.
He loves saying that. But I have open the effing door.
I was curious if that's where Jeremiah was going.
Yeah. Go get him, Tiger.
Nice.
That's my secret cap. I'm always angry.
Had that one.
Puny God.
I had actually the Loki speech leading up to that.
Yeah.
Alternatively, we could order a pizza from Civil War. Blank, you've been to space.
Yep, that's a good one.
Oh
wait, please tell me you had a JB Smoove line on there.
Urinals or stalls?
No, that is a good one too. But no, I was thinking of when you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do. When you're in Venice, your socks get wet.
No, I didn't have that, but I should have. I have You Wanted More.
Good.
He's a friend from work.
Yeah.
Sun's getting real low. You didn't see that coming.
Oh,
and I killed Sparky too.
Wow.
And then a combo that I was debating between Perfectly Balanced and What Did It Cost?
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that is a long list. You were right. And yet neither of you listed the one that I was very close to taking with my last pick, which is one of my favorites, and that is What is Grief If Not Love Persevering? That is just such an incredibly powerful line from Vision.
I was avoiding all emotional
I also had I mean, did anybody even say I Love You 3000? That was
on there. Yeah.
That was one that I was like, it's probably just below the top tier for me. The hardest choices require the strongest wills. And then one of my favorites, Does anybody have any orange slices?
Yeah, I knew that was one of your
one that I left off that I really should. I don't want to see this on your MySpace. That.
Nice. Yeah. That's good.
in a
That
system.
Man is Playing Galaga is another one that came to mind.
Funvy.
Yeah. There's so many. We could do a part 2 of this draft. To be honest, we might have to. This might be the first one that we revisit in the future.
And then we can't do any
from...
ones that we did in our honorable mentions. We have to go back and choose all new ones.
Yeah. All right, Jeremiah, thank you so much for joining us again. What do you got going on?
Nothing. No, I will be out in California next week, mostly for fun, but I'll be covering the Universal Studios Glamour Tram return. I'm excited about that. But yeah, no fun yet.
Well, thanks for joining us again, and we will definitely have you back. If not for the part 2 of this draft, then for something else.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Jeremiah.
Bye, guys.
All right. So that is going to do it for another episode of the Zzzax of Life podcast. We're going to continue to follow this schedule until we run into the fact that, there's 5 episodes left and we're doing 2 at a time. So math. So we'll be back in 2 weeks to break down hopefully less emotionally scarring episodes of X-Men 97. And then we'll go from there. But Kyle, anything else I should mention before we wrap things up today?
Just check out laughingplace.com for all of our coverage from Disneyland Paris today and CinemaCon yesterday and whatever comes up tomorrow.
And just all your Marvel and Disney news in general.
That too.
But other than that, we will be back in a couple of weeks. Thanks again, everyone. Bye.
Bye.